Welcome to Local Listens.
Welcome to Local Listens.
You're listening to Local Listens.
You're listening to Local Listens.
Local Listens.
Welcome to Local Listens.
Welcome to Local Listens.
Welcome to Loco Listens.
Local Listens.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Local Listens podcast. I'm with a very special friend today. I owe him many thanks. He was the first person to ever invite me onto a podcast, and since then, it's been about a month since we've spoken, and we're back together today to get into it. We have a lot to get into today, but first, let me introduce Immanuel Kingman of the Goodness Over Darkness podcast, the GODcast. So Immanuel has overcome addiction. He has experienced life in prison, sexual trauma. He's lost 100 pounds and is now a warrior for our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Additionally, Christ is the one who saved him from psychedelics, and now he is becoming, and I would say he is, a psychic. And all of a sudden, these demonic attacks that may have been troubling him in the past are no longer here, thanks to Christ. And that's who we're going to talk about a lot today. But I also want to thank him for doing the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. The GODcast has offered me a lot of value and love and light in these dark times starting in 2020. And I'm so blessed that we were able to come together. So Immanuel, welcome, man. How's it going today?
Well, thank you so much for having me. That's quite the intro you have. It humbles me every time someone tells me that my podcast helps them. It really does. I mean, some people, they feed their ego with it. Me, it's just like, I am not worthy. Not that I'm not worthy, but it's just like that humbleness. Like, I can't believe me telling my story just helps you. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, once you start telling your story and speaking your truth, which is what we're going to get into in just a second, it's amazing what kind of impact you would have, not only just in your own personal life, but like, you know, you might end up touching people who you had no idea were out there. So really thankful for you, bro. And I do have our first ritual question for you, Immanuel. When did you start to speak your truth?
So, okay, well, I guess, if we want to say my full truth. So when I started waking up in 2020, when I started turning people off to me, all the normies that were around me, when it was building up to COVID, and so we're talking January, February. So like December, January, February, I was posting questions on my Facebook. Now, I was a coach of a travel softball team, which is expensive. It is a lot of work, and parents that are putting their children into that, it was a 10-year-old team, 10U team. So it was 9 and 10-year-olds on the team. And the parents are, they're the type of parents that are going to be on top of their kids. So I start posting questions on my Facebook, like, I didn't post this one exactly, but like, how could jet fuel melt steel beams? Stuff like that. Just, just little things like, how could passports still be around after the Twin Towers fall? Little things like that, talking about the Fed isn't a government agency. It's actually a privately owned company. Like, did you guys know? I would do that like every day for a couple weeks. Did you know? So then in February, God started really putting on me, was like, all right, start warning people to prepare. So I do that, right? And then what happens is March hits and we get shut down, right? So as we're shut down, at first I told everybody, all the parents and all, I was like, look, right away, I was like, I'm canceling practice. And this was like right before we were made to cancel practice anyway. But this was like a day or two before. And I was like, look, I've been seeing videos in China. People are dropping, this. And that's why I was saying, like, in February, I was like, something's coming here, because I was saying all that in January, February. And they didn't really have issue with that because I was like, look, I'm being preemptive and we're going to cancel it. Then a few weeks in, and I'm like, all right, let's get back on the, let's get this thing going because the fatality rate just isn't there. And that's when things started getting hazy because some
Yeah.
parents were afraid. Some
Mhm.
parents were like, why aren't we out there already? And I'm like, look, whoever wants to come out, come out. And there would be like 5 girls there out of, I think we had 11 on the team.
Hmm.
And only 5 would show up. And it was like a depressing type of
Yeah,
practice
you lost
because
half your whole team. Yeah.
we worked so
Mm.
hard in the fall and winter doing indoor stuff. I mean, 3-4 times a week. Like we
Mm.
put a lot of effort into it. And we got to play one scrimmage, which we beat a team we shouldn't have been able to beat. They should have been much better than we were. And we beat them. And we were looking really good. And that's all we got to play together. It was
Mm.
very unfortunate. So I started speaking my truth more and more about COVID and how it was, not what they're telling us. And this started turning off the parents that were even kind of like interested in my questioning of, did you know?
Hmm.
That type of stuff that was getting them to question things. They were kind of like, oh, I need to separate myself from this guy. So everyone, all of a sudden, I was the odd man out. And then, I moved down to Georgia. So, but hey, it worked out for me. My daughter,
Yes,
she
sir.
just made the high school team. She's in 7th
Nice.
grade.
Hey,
Yeah,
congrats to her.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, she's easily. I mean, she's just she's a for real stud, and she's gonna go wherever she wants to go with this thing. She's the best pitcher in the county league ball, or like one of the best 2 pitchers, and she hasn't played in 2 years. That's how much
Wow.
practice we put in as a
Yeah.
10-year-old. She's that good. So, and she plays with 13 to 17-year-olds now, and she's one of the best 2 pitchers, probably the best pitcher on the high school team right now. So it's just incredible that she could just pick it up just like that because of all the practice we put in. So to all the parents that made me an outcast and now are coming to the truth, welcome finally.
Hey,
You're
welcome
coming
back.
around.
Yeah, man. Well, right on. It's good to hear. I mean, your daughter, she has an awesome dad. So I'm really happy that you guys have been able to connect through softball. And it's really cool. And you've been able to support her in that regard. And speaking of softball and coaching, there's something that you did bring up at one point. It's really cool that you're a coach, by the way. Like that's a really awesome role. And it's a very special role to be able to motivate and lead people. And you've also have mentioned that you're into life coaching. Is that true, Immanuel?
Yeah, I do life coaching. That's been not as prevalent lately, but yeah, coaching is something that you can use in any sense. I'm a coach of whatever it is. Like if I'm at work and I'm helping someone, a coworker, I'm coaching them on how to do it better. I'm not doing things for people. I coach them up, and whether it's food shopping, if you want to get the proper food, whatever it is, I'm always trying to help people and show them a better way. So yeah, I coach in every aspect.
Awesome, man. Awesome, man. Let's think about this for a second. So like when you're doing food shopping, for example, that's a great, well, it's something that people should think about quite a bit. Like when you consume certain things, certain foods or certain ideologies, certain belief systems, they really do transform you quite a lot. And I did see you recently post, I think you were having a little fire. You were burning a couple things, and I think I think you know what I'm referring to. Yeah, it's very interesting. I would love to hear you. Yeah, I would love to hear you tell this story because I was very curious about it, and it's something that I definitely can relate to for sure. So, would you like to tell us all about this this sacrificial fire that you've experienced recently?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, that poster, that thing goes back. I mean, I've had some experiences with that poster. So I'll give you the first experience was I got that poster from like,
What kind of poster is it, by the way?
So it was Buddha. It was a very large Buddha poster, and it was a cool thing. It was something I got in like TJ Maxx or Ross or something. It was when I was filling vending machines. I walked by and I saw it, and it was when I was waking up. So I was like, oh, okay, I like this. And I just got my own apartment. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put this behind my TV. So that's what I did.
Nice.
So during one of my many meditations at the time that I was doing for several hours, what happened was this golden warrior, warrior in golden samurai gear, stepped out of the poster. So this is all happening through my mind's eye while I'm
Like
meditating.
psychically, yeah.
Yeah. He steps out of the poster and he knights me. Right shoulder, left shoulder, and then my forehead. And he knights me. So like a day or two after that, me and my daughter, we get our first cat, Charlotte. She's black and white. So then what ends up happening, she runs away at some point a few months later. She ran away for about 10 days. She was more lost than ran away, but she wasn't at home for 10 days. Now during that 10-day period is when the clouds started coming to me.
Ooh.
And it's very interesting because the day that they started coming to me was May 17th, and I was being told 2020, and I was being told since January that May 17th would be life-changing for me, that things would be coming, and that at different times they would just drop in, May 17th. And then at different times things would drop in that they will appear as clouds to you. And that would be, 3-4 times throughout that time. And then on that day, I'm outside because my cat had run away. And so I'm on my porch out back, and I'm just waiting for her, and it's 11 o'clock at night, and I was expecting like the Anunnaki and Nibiru to come or whatever.
Right.
And then I just get the urge to look up and snap a photo of the sky, which I do, and it's on my website, and it's just 2 eyes, and it's a cross, and it looks like something's covering the mouth. And then I'm like, whoa, what? And then I take another picture, and then it's Jesus, and I see Jesus in my clouds, and I'm like, this is insane. So anyway, I say that because like 2-3 days later, I get a photo, and it's the first one you'll see if you go on there, is this samurai cat being.
Oh.
And I'm like, that's my cat.
In the clouds.
In the clouds. I was like, that was the samurai, the knight in me went into my cat. So in between that time, when I was doing these meditations, right after we got our cat, I saw her, I was meditating, she's running around, and I saw her being chased by a cat in like a little Jetsons vehicle. That it was like, I guess a Merkaba or something.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That it was like following her around. So I cleared it away, and when I did that, she rubbed up against me. It's the first time she rubbed up against me because I don't know, I stopped her from being chased. But
yeah, you made her feel safer. Yeah.
Right. So that spirit went into her like right around that time. So then when she ran away, I saw the spirit in the sky. I'm like, oh my God. So I took it as a sign, like, okay, she's all right. It's just, she'll be back. And sure enough, she is. So, okay. So then another time, so fast forward to, I don't know, like March 2021. We had, so when I moved into Mimi's house here in Georgia, we put it up in the living room. And yeah, so this was right before Easter. This was actually the Friday before Easter 2021.
Okay. Yeah.
And we were having like a long week, and I walk in the house, and actually, no, it wasn't Friday, but it was like the week leading up to Easter. So I walk in the house, and I look up, and the poster's not there, and there's another picture there in its place. And me and Mimi had not been fighting, but there was a little bit of turmoil. So I was like, did she take that down because she's mad at me? So I went, and I'm like, Mimi, where's the poster? And because I really liked that poster. I mean, it was a cool poster. I really liked it. And she was like, what? I didn't touch it. She's like, I can't get that thing down because it's so high up.
Oh, I see.
And there's a desk in the way, which, I mean, I guess you could stand on, but it's not the.
But it was gone.
Desk.
It was replaced with a different image.
It was, not just an image, but it was replaced with one of those photos that has like 9 different photos in it, different sections, a collage of sorts.
Okay.
And in the center, so again, Charlotte had run away for another few days down here. She was gone for a few days. And during this time, this poster gets switched out. Now, in the center of this collage photo that is then up there is a picture of a black cat that Mimi used to have, and its name was Charlie.
Oh,
And
Charlotte and Charlie.
yeah, my black cat's name's Charlotte. So I'm like, whoa, this is super weird. So then we're looking around, we're all asking each other, we're like, who took this down? The kids are like, did you take it? You know,
Like, have
whispering
you
to
seen
each
Buddha?
other.
We've been looking for Buddha. Have you seen Buddha?
Yeah, like we're all like, me and Mimi are like telling the kids, like, you better, you know, bring this back here. This isn't a funny joke, you know. We want, but the kids are all whispering to each other. They're like, did you do it? They're like, no, I thought you did it. They're like, nobody did it. So then I end up finding it in the garage, like hidden in between some stuff, and I'm like, that's just super
It's like
weird.
someone stashed it in there.
yeah, and nobody could have gotten to it. Like I said, I mean, someone could have gotten a chair to do it, but there's a desk. There's a whole process of things that would have had to go on in order for anyone else to get it, because I'm the only one that's tall enough to. So okay, so then I go to get a shower that night, and Jesus tells me, I'm in the bathroom. He says, I took it down. I just hear a real audible in my ears. I took it down. No false idols in the house over Easter. And I was like, okay. So that was the first time I really heard Jesus that way without being in a meditation or anything. And I was like, all right, well, that's strange. You know, did Jesus really just tell me that? And I was looking in the mirror when I heard it, and it was like he was behind me and just like put his hand on my shoulder.
Yeah.
So okay, so now fast forward a whole year later, and it's about to be Easter 2022, and the thought comes to me one day at work, and this thing has just been in the garage for the last year. I haven't thought about it.
Just kind of like left it there since then.
Yeah. So I just have the thought, burn it. And I'm like, all right. So I come home, and I turn around, and there is a huge snapping turtle watching me burn this Buddha poster.
Wow.
It's watching me burn it. And my cat is out there, Charlotte, and she's sneaking around it, trying to get behind it, and like, you know, she's gonna wreck house if she needs to.
Right.
The dogs are sitting there barking at it, but it's not reacting because the fence is in the way. So I'm like, that's super weird. So as soon as the whole poster part burns up, it walks down this hill. Now where it's at, there behind our house is a railroad tracks, and so there's a very deep ditch. It goes down 6-7 feet, and it's, you know, if you ever seen railroad tracks, they're steep.
There's dips in between.
It's not like this turtle or tortoise or whatever, you know, could have easily gone to the position it was in, but it was there to watch me burn that thing. So my daughter comes home from school, gets dropped off the bus. I hear the bus, you know, she walks to the backyard, and she goes, Dad, guess what I just saw? And I'm like, what? She goes, I just saw a turtle. And I'm like, no, you didn't. She's like, yep. And there's no way she knew that I just experienced this. So I'm like, when? She's like, I don't know, a few minutes ago. So, and it was, she was like, it was when we were in the next little town over, not town, little
like the last bus stop. Yeah.
And I'm like, so I was like, how long does that take you? Like 10 minutes? She's like, yeah, 10-15 minutes. And I was like, that's, you know, I look at the time, I look at when I was recorded it, and it was the same exact time she saw a turtle, I saw a turtle. All these synchronicities always line up with me, and my cat Charlotte was always involved with this photo, and Jesus, you know, I'm listening to music, or maybe I was listening to a podcast about Jesus at that time, but it's just like all these different things always line up. That's just how synchronicities go. So yeah, that's what happened with that poster.
Interesting. Well, before I ask you a couple of follow-up questions, since you brought up synchronicity, because that is definitely a synchronistic type of event or moment that you guys shared with all of you too, because this like kind of disappearing act or the switcheroo that had happened. And
Yeah.
I just want to quickly give a shout out to my friend Amy, because she was talking to me about synchronicity, but she pronounces it synchronicity, like gnosis and
Yeah.
Gnosticism. And it's kind of funny that these messages come to you. This form of gnosis will come to you through these quote unquote coincidences. And this happened to be one that was about a particular idol. And in this case, it was Buddha. And there's nothing against Buddha here, but it was like this message was very distinct and very specific for you. And it's funny that it was happening around Easter. It was like this household has to be reborn under a new idol or something like that. But I'm curious, when you're talking about doing this ritual and being guided to do this, and that moment where you're looking in the mirror and you get this message, I want to ask you, when did you start to hear Jesus or open up this dialogue with him? I know you've told this story before. I've heard you tell this story, but I'm curious when this recognition that you were hearing the voice of Christ began. And then, because that's the beginning of quite a journey, you could say, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, okay. So, well, one more thing to wrap up the Buddha thing is that a turtle is a reptile, right? A reptilian.
Yes, it is.
And it's not really harmful. Even a snapping turtle isn't too harmful, but it's still a reptilian.
It is.
Well, it's symbolic for Buddha is, could be a reptilian, not a harmful one.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah.
But he's still a reptile, whereas I am a mammal.
Right.
Like a cat, that type of deal. So
it's like the Godzilla versus King Kong dilemma. It's like we associate ourselves with King Kong more than Godzilla because we're mammalian. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Okay. So where did my journey with Jesus, so the first time I ever took psychedelics, I did too much, what's it called? Coughing syrup. Robitussin, that type of deal, and I purposely did it, and I saw him clear as day, Wizard of Oz style, just a huge head, green, that's like it's the outline of his head and face, and I saw him, and I was being told like, okay, yeah, that's Jesus, but he's not for you, but he will help you, or he will help whoever is in need if you call on his name. And he shook his head up and down, yes, and then his head went like kind of sideways, and he winked at when the voice was telling me that, and I'm like, okay. So now I realize like he was winking, like, yeah, I'm not for you, wink, wink. Yeah. So that was the first time I saw him. And now that kind of shaped me into this understanding of, and actually it's a synchronicity that this woman is now on Instagram trying to tell me that about who Jesus is. And she keeps telling me, no, he's not our Lord and Savior. He just showed us the way. And it's like, yeah, okay, I was at that stage. And I was like, yeah, I know him differently now because I've developed this relationship. So
I just add really quick too, like synchronicity and synchronicity, like we just talked about earlier. It's like gnosis is so personal. Like I feel like no one could ever tell you, like, if you have like a relationship with Christ, it's like, well, like no one can define that for you, So I'm glad that you didn't really like listen or take too much stock in what she said. But sorry, continue.
No, well, I mean, I take in what she says, and I'm like, okay, I understand your point, but there's still more.
It's not just
you aren't finished on your understanding it. Like you've got to this level, and you had to get to that level to get to the next one, but you aren't finished. Like you think that your level is above mine, so you're trying to preach to me how I should be living, but because you're preaching to me how I should be living, that's how I know that you haven't gone to the level that I've gone to, because I'm done preaching that how people should be living, because I've grown this relationship with Christ and I've been there. So so that was the first time that I really had an encounter. But it
was that scary for you? Because like I've never tried that substance, but like I can imagine if you were looking for Jesus, that would be one thing, but like were you expecting to see him at that point?
I had no conception of Jesus at all. I didn't I wasn't for him, against him.
You
I
like
didn't
instantly
think
recognized him, you know?
yeah, I knew it was him automatically. It was a knowing, a gnosis. It was
Mm.
I saw Jesus in front of me and I knew it was him. And what uh it then shaped me into, okay, you know, he's there.
Mm.
That like he's real as far as that goes, but I had already uh had like I don't know, I didn't have an understanding of Christianity. I thought it was nonsense. So I was like, okay, just saw Jesus's
You're, like,
head.
missing context.
Yeah, so I already kind of thought that maybe there was like a spirit world that, so I didn't really understand anything at that time, but it didn't make me think like, okay, Christianity's real. That didn't, it didn't do that at all. So because I was psychic already a little bit before that, my crown chakra popped open and I was learning about that stuff a little bit before I ever did psychedelics. So I was like, kind of like, okay, you know, that was cool, but I was told this lie that he's not for you, but he's there if I ever need him. So then I was like, it shapes you, you know, it gives you this understanding like, okay, because I'm being told this, because I'm seeing this, I take this for full truth because I was lied to my whole life. And now I'm waking up that I was deceived. So now I'm just going to believe all of this stuff that I'm learning on my own through psychedelics and through, I'm just hearing it from my own mind and seeing it. And so therefore this is all truth. And there's not a discernment that grew from there for me. So so now there is a discernment that I have. So then that kind of just led me into being psychic and hearing people's thoughts and just really learning spiritual warfare, how to remote view, how to pick up on people's thoughts of me, and how to actually tap into my own vibrational frequency, the vibrational pattern that my name holds. You know, everything, the name of something has power, well, because it holds a special vibrational frequency.
Absolutely.
So I used to tap into that to hear what people thought of me. Like if someone, like if, okay, I want to see what Jake Loco thinks of me, you know, all I got to do is think of Jake Loco. And at some point you would have, whether it's past, present, or future, you have this thought of me that I pick up on. And I'm like, okay, now how can I change his opinion of me if it's a bad one, or even if it's a good one, how can I alter it to be even better? So that kind of did help me realize the error of my ways. It helped me gain other people's perspectives of myself and what I was doing to others, how I was affecting them. But it's not something that you really want to be doing. So I don't typically do that anymore. I guess I gained so many different perspectives that I just kind of have a more grand perspective, an objective perspective almost on how to live, because I just give it up to Jesus really now. So I'm just like, okay, he'll have a better perspective.
And a quick question on that, because like what makes you so interesting, Immanuel, is that you were, I mean, it sounds like before this experience with Christ, that you were already interested in psychic abilities, or you had already kind of fostered that skill, to put it frankly. So it's cool that this experience and everything that follows it has added to that previous interest or that previous talent that you've had.
Yeah, I completely stumbled into Jesus. You know, like most people, when they go down the path of spirituality, they don't come back to Jesus.
Right.
And most people, or they don't come to him at all, not just come back, but
yeah.
And most people who come into Jesus don't go down the path of spirituality. But for me, it's been this stumbling of psychic abilities. And I don't just mean like, I mean like the craziest things. Like I couldn't predict the future, but I could hear someone's thoughts across town. It didn't matter. Like the weirdest things. Like I had this thought all of a sudden one time where my parents were talking about something, and then I said it to my mom a week later. We were talking on the phone, and I'm like, or maybe a couple days later, and I'm like, I and she wasn't believing me that I was psychic. And I was like, well, I heard you and I saw you turn to dad and say this exact phrase on Sunday. And she was blown away. She was just like I gotta go. Like I don't know how this is happening right now.
It's defying the laws of physics over here.
Yeah, and it was happening so much so often. Like there were several times where Mimi and I had company over and I would hear what the person was about to say in my head. Now, I didn't know they were about to say it, but I would hear it in their voice and they would be like, pass the salt. And then 3-5 seconds later, they say, pass the salt. And then I hear whoever's passing the salt back to that person was like saying a reply in their head. I heard that in their voice in my head, and then they would say it. And it was like, how do you deal with life when you have that going on? So
it'd be tough to be so sensitive to the etheric realm, or to, you know, this realm of thought, this collective unconscious that's surrounding us at all times.
Exactly. So when you're dealing with that type of stuff, it's like, wow. So like the way that people mostly see Christ and Christianity, they think like that's tamped down into a shoebox of, you know, nonsense of, you know, just physical, and you have to live by these laws and rules, and that's not what Christianity actually is. That's how it's presented to people on purpose. It's to push you away from Christ, or it's to box you in and keep you thinking that you can only do these certain things for Christ. And
yeah, we should also we should always consider how culture has kind of skewed what Christianity is or was and could be for anyone in their personal experience, for sure.
Yeah, because it could never be stopped, but they could pervert it to get the people to not look at it in the correct manner. So, okay, so what ends up happening, like I said, all that psychic stuff happens. I was seeing things, hearing things, not really predicting things too much, just so I could get a grand sense of things to come. And then I started seeing my life play out on massive scales. You know, if I got a haircut, then I would be cutting the grass, or you know, Mimi would have someone come cut the grass. It would be like as above, so below. You know,
right.
Above it's the grass. You know, below it's my hair. So I really saw how everything is repeating itself on a fractal nature, and I had a great understanding of all this stuff through psychedelics, through psychic abilities, through meditation, all that stuff. I got a grandiose picture of how consciousness operates. And slowly but surely, and through my podcast even, Jesus has reeled me back in to show me that that's what the Bible is actually talking about. That like all the things that I learned, now I wouldn't have learned it in the same way, and I wouldn't maybe have understood it in the same way, but because I learned how consciousness operates, and now I read the Bible, now I'm like, okay, this is exactly what John's talking about. And he says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He's talking about consciousness. He's talking about Christ is consciousness.
Right.
But he's not talking about Christ consciousness. You know, there's a little wordplay.
Very different. Yeah.
So, okay. So then my biggest connection with Christ, because that's, I know that what you wanted to get into with that question, was I was working. It was the Friday after Biden was inaugurated as president. I had deleted my Twitter because in November, December. Yeah. Well, in November, December.
You're back though. I'm glad you're back.
Yeah. Well, it's for the podcast. So November, December, when Biden won, had been into Q and Trump, my awakening process. So from March 2020 to, the election, I was decoding all that stuff. I was looking into all that, and there's a lot of weird stuff, and still a lot of weird stuff that we don't have any answers for. All those people who were all celebrities that were locked down doing all this.
Yeah, summer of 2020 was very spooky, man.
Super weird, man, with Ellen and Oprah.
Yeah, Tom Hanks.
Yeah, so many weird things. So there is something to it. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist at all. There is something to it, but I was being deceived by all of that, and
Yeah.
my focus was on all that. So then once Biden won the election, I was like, man, they did it again.
Mhm.
They got our hopes up, and then they pulled the rug out from under us.
Jack
And
called that loosh.
yeah, and I was like, they're not. I was like, well, first I was like, Trump is going to definitely get back in. And then as it was going on, I was like, no, he's not. They're just messing with us. So once it came down to like the final like 2 weeks before the inauguration, I was like, look, it's either now or never. Either this conspiracy theory comes true or it was a hoax. And then once Biden was inaugurated, I was like, that's it. Boom, delete Twitter. And actually, after an hour after I tweet out that I was deleting my Twitter, Twitter suspended my account forever.
Oh, damn. They probably associated you with some, as Justin Trudeau would say, people with unacceptable views.
Yeah, well, they were definitely tapping into me. Like all those January 6th people, I don't know if you heard Mitch Vuk's story on with the Big Dumb podcast. He's a podcast host of Down the Rabbit Hole.
Okay, I was just with Kyle on the talk at the tavern. So Big Dumb podcast is awesome, but no, I've never heard this January 6th story. What is this?
Okay, so Mitch Vuk, he's a podcast host of Down the Rabbit Hole, one of the two, and so he just went on the Big Dumb podcast and told his story about what happened. So on January 6th, he went into allegedly, well, I guess he was convicted for it. So he went into the
You went inside the Capitol building?
Okay. Yeah, the Capitol.
Yeah.
So he said like for months the FBI was watching him, and he didn't know. They didn't make contact.
Yeah.
That like he took a vacation to Vegas, and they showed up when he stepped off the plane, and they were there, and they were talking about. So me doing all that decoding stuff of Q posting on Twitter, I'm like, yeah, they were definitely like watching and surveilling me, like thinking like I'm some kind of terrorist. And then they didn't find anything because I wasn't doing anything. But yeah, they were definitely surveilling me, and I would pick up on in my meditations and all. Military.
Because you always have that sense when someone's watching you, and it could even be, I guess, like a digital thing too. But like, yeah, when you're meditating and tapping into that ether once again, or that that field, that collective field, it's like, all right, you can sense something's off in the force.
Well, once you know how to remote view and you start doing it, when you start remote viewing your own vibrational frequency and where it's going off to, well, then anyone who's thinking about you or talking about you or writing about you, it goes. And people that have it in their subconscious because it's their job, and it was 7 a.m. they were told to look into me for something. Well, that stays with them for the rest of the day. The thoughts don't really leave us the way that it's not just gone. It kind of just exists in this bubble around us. So I would pick up on it, and I could remote view these people, and I don't want to say anything more than that, but I could hear and see these people, these FBI agents, these military people, CIA people, whatever they actually are, is unbeknownst to me. But I was interacting with them, and I was just thinking while I was in a meditative pose, and they were very aware of what was going on, and there would be multiple people in some scenarios. So I very much knew that I was being watched and followed and stuff like that. So anyway, after I delete my Twitter, I am working. It's the Friday after I'm working, and I'm a truck driver. I'm delivering chicken. Well, I'm delivering all sorts of restaurant supplies, but I have 400 pounds of chicken and cheese on my hand truck, and I go to lift it up this little lip, and it's a wet floor, and I slip, and the whole thing falls on me. I fall on my root chakra. Ooh. I feel like I'm paralyzed. I literally can't feel my legs. I'm pinned down, and there's only two older women, probably 50s, 60s, and they speak only Spanish. And I speak a little bit of Spanish, but when you're in that much thriving pain, I couldn't
hard to remember
anything but English, and I'm just like, get it off of me. And I don't even know how to say that in Spanish anyway. So they kind of like pull it up a little bit, and I slide myself out because I couldn't feel my legs, and it was just so much pain.
Ouch.
So yeah, so I finished working that day. I worked the next day, Saturday as well. And actually the day in between the inauguration, which was Wednesday, and the Friday that I got hurt was Thursday. Thursday on my way home from work, I stopped at the smoke shop and I got a huge bag of tobacco because I had the thought for a few days, like, let me get a big bag of tobacco to burn it in the fire because we had fires all the time in the backyard. So on Saturday, I get home from work. I'm throwing tobacco in the fire. I'm walking around it. And I'm just like doing this because at this point, I'm very psychic and intuitive. And I just go with my thoughts. So I'm just doing it and not really knowing that tobacco is a Native American practice, burning tobacco to ward off evil spirits. I didn't know that. But I'm just doing it.
Very similar to smudge.
Yeah.
Or like sage, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, it is like a smudging type of deal. And I'm listening to Jesus music because that's all I listen to. And I'm just walking around doing it. Okay, so then Sunday, I am drinking tea, a special tea that I made that would help alleviate the pain, but then it made me a little goofy, a little, loopy. And because I was drinking it all day. So then when I'm with my daughter at night, I'm telling her to go to bed as she's making me laugh. So then because I'm laughing, I start to feel ill. Now I don't connect the two at the time, but I'm laughing and then I feel ill.
Like a little nauseous.
Yeah. So I'm like, I gotta go. I thought it was like I had too much tea, maybe, I gotta go lay down or whatever. So then I get to the bedroom and I'm fine. And then Mimi makes me laugh like almost instantly. She makes me laugh. And I have to hobble to the bathroom really quick because, again, I felt like I had to throw up. So I go to throw up and I hurl. And it was like the two biggest hurls I ever did. Nothing physically came out of me.
Right.
But the relief that I had, it was just like, hallelujah. And the words, Jesus Christ just saved my life is the only thing that I could think of. And I throw open that door and I'm like, Mimi, Jesus Christ just saved me. And she's smiling the biggest smile. And she goes, I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
And it was just like so incredible. And yeah, so that was my biggest encounter with Jesus. And I've had many, he's with me literally all the time now. But yeah, that was the moment he saved me from all of the deception that I was in. And when I was like started my process of coming home to him, and it's I'm still in that process, of course, but
right on, man. Yeah, it's very fascinating too that it was like, when people say laughter is the best medicine, it's just, I find it very interesting that it was laughter that facilitated this experience. And last time we spoke about Dante's Inferno, and I'm getting ready to dive into part 2, which is Purgatory. And what you've just reminded me of is, and I have to thank slick dissident Gabe for pointing this out to me, because I didn't really think about it at all, that Purgatory or Purgatory is all about, getting rid of something. And it's really fascinating that even though there was like nothing physical to puke up, it was like, well, you're purging something out, and now you're in a more cleansed state. And I can tell that, I don't consider myself to be psychic. Who knows, I might be, but I do get a sense about people, and I can tell that you've been relieved of some type of weight, and I'm sure you can speak on that. And especially when you look into how your relationship to yourself and your family and the world around you has changed since then. When you look back on the 2020 era, when you first started and you were getting, you got yourself off of Twitter and all of this, where do you see yourself going now? Because you've been doing a lot of cool projects, including the Millennial Kingdom, which I would love to hear you kind of promote a little bit. I've been listening to it. And how did you get interested in looking at history after this type of experience?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So like when I when I had that big purge, I realized I had this big I've been saved moment. And I was like, I had the realization, because before that I had thought, like most people do, I'm more special than everybody else. I am super psychic. I have all these great abilities. I
There's a
have
name for that, by the way. It's called the
egotistical.
Paul Revere effect. When you like realize the British are
Okay.
coming, and you're like, I gotta tell everybody the British are coming.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's that. But yeah, I was like thinking like I was more special than everyone else. But at that moment, I realized millions of people have experienced this before, and this is why people say I've been saved by Christ. I realized in that moment that, okay, everyone else is equal to me, and we all share the same capacity and abilities. Now obviously there's minor differences in all of us, like there is with anything else.
Like if you had two psychics in the same room, like they would not be experiencing the same thing. I bet like they would have like, it's like they're feeling the elephant and like they've got two different perspectives, but they're still tapping into something.
Right. Yeah. So that's when I realized, like, okay, that we're all human, and this I am special, but I'm not more special than everyone else. I am special because God made me specifically, but He did that for all of us. So it really changes your perspective from having to be the savior to then being saved. It's very different. So there's what that did for me. I started my podcast in April of 2021. And I was then telling my story, and then I started interviewing people who I was interested in. Now I had a lot of conspiracy theories. I gobble up information. When I get on a topic, I consume it, and I live that thing for a few days, weeks, and I consume a lot of information about it. And then some things stick for good, some things I'll just forget about. But
even before COVID, right?
Yeah, before COVID as well. Yeah, that's when it started. It was like 2019 is when my waking process really started. So okay, so then it was, how did I get into history? Well, what happened was I was interviewing, it was the Tartaria stuff. Started, I think it was like probably Tinfoil Hat was where I first heard about Tartaria. And the one guy that came on that said Red Bricks, who said all mountains are melted buildings, and I was like, that's the most preposterous thing.
Sounded crazy.
Yeah. Well, some things are better seen than they are told.
Right.
And if you go see his YouTube page, it's better than listening to him on a podcast. But anyway, it was like, that was the first time it was introduced to me. Then I heard Andreas Exertus on with
that guy's a genius.
Yeah.
He's been on My Family Thinks I'm Crazy. He goes like a lot of the alt media. Oh God, I gotta check out that episode.
Yeah,
that sounds cool.
Good. Yeah. Episode 34. So cool. Yeah, so I heard him on Conspiracy Castle with Alex Stein, and it was the funniest episode I've ever heard. And I was like, okay, that's what really got me into it. Like, okay, it was presented in this great, funny way with very interesting ideas. They're both going back and forth talking about weird, crazy stuff because they both had an understanding about it. So then I start to look into it. I come across Ryan Zem, who I spent weeks on his YouTube page. He has a great YouTube page. I interviewed him 2 different times. I find Michelle Gibson.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, I had her on 2 different times. I found Howdy McCoskey. I had him on. Matt from The Great Deception.
Yeah.
Actually, I interviewed Howdy and Matt the same day.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It was like a couple hours apart, and it was so cool. Yeah, the 2 of them are like, they're the experts at the World's Fairs. So so doing that, so in between there, I found, or rather this woman found my podcast and was telling me about Christ's Millennial Kingdom. That's not Tartaria. Tartaria is Tartarus, which is ancient Greek or just Greek, and in biblical terms, Tartarus is the abyss. It's hell. It's the deepest, darkest part of hell, the abyss, which is what we call outer space. That is the abyss. And she's telling me that Tartaria is that, and that the peaceful, worldwide, loving civilization with free energy and all that, it's actually Christ's Millennial Kingdom. So then I'm like, okay, well, I want to hear about this. What do you mean it's Christ's Millennial Kingdom? I had no concept. I wasn't reading the Bible at the time. I had no idea about any of that. So then she sends me all these different YouTube videos. She's like, Christ has been waking me up at 2, 3, 4 in the morning and telling me to go type in this in the search bar on YouTube, and I would type it in and I would watch the video and it would blow my mind. So there's videos of Satan's short season, part 1, part 2, like the production value of this stuff.
What was that YouTube channel again?
I don't know actually.
Oh, okay, we can talk about that later. Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, the episode, or the movie, it's called like Satan's Short Season, and the production value is really top notch too. This guy, he does a great job. But so I watch all the stuff she sends me, and I'm blown away. There's another woman who was going over all the different depictions of Jesus throughout the entire world, and she was like, these depictions are of him when he was here, and what we call the 1200s, quote unquote, air quotes, 1200s, that he was actually here. And all these depictions are depictions of him being our king. And I was like, okay, that's very interesting. So then, that's not an idea that I have. My idea with the different depictions of him are that different people were ruling all at the same time, who all had a similar look, and they were all depicted, and they said they were all the kings because they had this divine right to rule because of whatever reason. They were just known as the sons of God, or
lineage of Christ,
right? And they were kings, and they were saying, no, you don't see me, you see Jesus, you see the King of Kings. He was the king of all the kings, was Christ, who is the invisible God. And all these men were then depicted, and they were captioned as Jesus because Jesus was working through them. So that's what my idea was, which kind of still is. That's how I think that Christ really operates. But I do believe Christ was Yeshua fully. And that's something.
A quick question for people who might be wondering, and there's something that I learned recently, which I was very shocked, honestly, actually. So people probably know Quetzalcoatl. I believe he's the figure in Mexico. It's like this feathered serpent, like a dragon. There's also I was thinking about that. I heard you speak about this term Amaruca, and I would love to hear you go into that a bit if you would like. But there's also one last thing I want to add to this, which is based on what you were just saying, and I'm sure you can tie it all together because I'm trying to make sense of it, and I definitely need a little bit of help. So maybe we can do it here. There is a story. There's a painting in the Book of Mormon, which I was recently introduced to. It's very interesting. It's showing Christ in Mexico with the pyramids. So there's like a painting of Christ, and he's standing there with people of Mexico back in the time of the Aztecs, I believe, and the pyramids are in the background. It's this great painting that tells a totally different story, totally different timeline than what most people were led to believe, whether it's like historical timeline or just the story of Christ himself that people know, like in a mythological sense. Either way, what have you have you heard of this before, and does that relate to any of the Amaruca weaves or the Quetzalcoatl stories at all? Do you have any thoughts on all that?
Well, no, I have not heard of that depiction yet, but when you were telling me, I was hearing that's not me.
Mm,
That's not me. That's what it was told, and now he's telling me yes, like that. That was not him. Um, but the Mormons do believe that Quetzalcoatl was Jesus. Some
yes.
do anyway, which is goes into the inversion of why I believe Quetzalcoatl is the Antichrist.
Mm,
That he is actually like the opposite of what Christ is. Veracocha, what's his name? Man, I forget the name of it, but they, I think that's in like Hawaii that they're saying
mm.
that that was Jesus there, but it was again Quetzalcoatl. It's this weird thing where it's like this white man with white hair, white
Yep.
long hair, white beard. That's Quetzalcoatl. That is not Jesus.
Hmm.
So it's this weird thing, but I have to look into it more in order to get a more firm understanding of
Me too.
everything.
Me too. Figured I'd throw
Uh,
it out there because I can definitely remember, some of your points in this great Millennial Kingdom series about these deceptions or these coming deceptions
mhm.
that would take many forms, whether it was, figures who may look or represent Christ but would not be authentic, and
Right.
also a whole different side of it being what's known as Project Bluebeam, which I find fascinating because especially in, I think it was the summer of 2021, last summer, there were these documents. This new UAP part of the government was formed to study aerial phenomenon that was unexplainable, and
Hmm.
it seems like we're headed down a path that things that were once unexplainable are going to start to build narratives within culture. And I'm very curious what you think about this direction that we're heading in based on all of your research and what you've dove into when you look into the Millennial Kingdom.
Okay. Well, yeah. So what I think is going to happen. So I just to get catch the audience up a bit. If
Mm,
you're not familiar with my series, I suggest you go to my YouTube channel, Goodness Over Darkness,
a lot of
and
good imagery.
yeah, watch the 8-part series to get a really good understanding of what we're talking about. But the great deception I think that is coming is I think it's multiple things. Because I think that, well, I know that we're not all the same, and some people are more into psychedelics, some people are more into virtual reality and video games, some people are more into spirituality and magical practices,
Mm,
some people are more into aliens and space,
mm.
some people are more into politics and Trump and QAnon, and some people are more into serving demons and drinking blood. Like that, there's people that that do that. So I think that the great deception is something that is encompassing all of that,
Mm,
and it is, I believe, uh, that there's politicians and billionaires are pulling the strings, but they're fighting one another. That Satan, the head of Satan, the Leviathan,
mm,
the adversary, is doing the same thing that God did at one time. God, okay, and this gets into, you have to really
we're
get
seeing
into
like a
the,
spiritual war unfolding. Is that
yes,
kind of what you're saying?
exactly.
Yeah.
You have to get into the Old Testament in order to
Mm,
get a firm understanding of what I'm about to say. But demons, what they do is they impregnate a woman by going into a man. Then, when the man's having sex with the woman, they will show themselves to the woman at the moment of ejaculation.
mm,
And if the woman sees whatever she sees at that moment, she will then birth. So if she sees the demon, then the demon can go inside of her and she can be pregnant with a demon.
mm,
So they were trying to have themselves born. So it wasn't that they were just um, raping these women essentially, but they were also then putting themselves inside the woman so that they could be born into a physical body.
mm.
So Yahweh did that with Yeshua. Yahweh went into Mary, and not in a rape sense, but it's this way the tactics are similar, that Yahweh went into this woman to bore so she could bore out Yahweh into a human vessel.
It was like a transfer. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what happened with Yeshua. Now Satan, the Leviathan, is trying to copy that, or did copy that, and had Quetzalcoatl. And that was the son of perdition. That was Satan's son, Leviathan, the serpent being that was also human. And I mean, that's where I really get into it with my story or with my series. And that's where Q and Trump come in, because that's the two-headed, Trump is the man, Q is the dragon, right? And there's a lot of stuff that goes with that. Elon Musk, I believe, is probably involved in a very big way as well. Kanye West is probably involved in that as too. But so I believe that they are throwing their brothers and sisters, these other fallen angels and demons, to the wolves. We are the wolves. We have become the wolves now. And they are throwing them to us, and it's becoming more blatant and more obvious what is going on, because they don't have any other choice, because old Donnie broke the rules.
Right.
And he broke the rules because he's the son of perdition, or becoming again. I don't know how it all works, but he is bringing back the son of perdition. And he's throwing everyone else to the wolves so that he can then say, look at what I did for you all. Look how great I am. And everyone, because like I said in the beginning, I think that there is something going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to. I think that there is, I don't know if it's military operation, I guess it would be to a degree. We don't know why the president, our current resident of the White House,
resident, I love that.
Yeah, why he is doing these photos or videos across the street and pretending to be in the White House when he's not in there.
Yeah.
There's
Even the
a
whole
lot of
getting
weird
jabbed
stuff
in like that studio, like you just said, is so strange. I mean, why not do it in the actual White House? Like, what's the...
And like Nancy Pelosi now supposed to be in Ukraine with Zelensky.
She was going to go to Taiwan as well.
Well, it's totally fake. I'm looking at it. I'm like, they're not next to each other. Like, they are clearly not in the same room. And then
remember that Tupac hologram? Like, if they could do that, then I mean...
Well, I saw something was a couple weeks ago. It was Cameron Diaz with Lucy Liu and what's her name from the Charlie's Angels, and they're like, they were all in this one room and in the same chair. There's one here, there's one here, and there's one in the middle.
Like
and they're like, one of us isn't here. And Cameron Diaz wasn't there, but it looked exactly like she was. And it's like, yeah, if they can do that, what can they do? Remember that Will Smith commercial from 2019 when he's saying, he's like, it was so weird. He was like, man, it's 2019. He's like on this vacation. He goes, man, I'm not on a vacation. This is a green screen behind me. He goes, matter of fact, I don't look this good. I haven't looked this good in years. And he's like, all of a sudden, like all the background starts changing. He starts changing. He becomes like older looking and like just saying, he's like, man, it's 2019. Nothing's real anymore.
Oh my God, dude. That's like revelation of the method, like, to the point right there.
And it was Will Smith too, right? And he slapped Chris Rock, right? So there's so many weird things. And then the other night, a guy tackles Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock is there.
Protect comedians, guys. We have to protect these comedians at all costs.
well, Chris Rock goes, whoa, was that Will Smith?
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. Someone's now attacking Dave Chappelle when Chris Rock is there. Like MK Ultra, these Manchurian candidates, release the hounds. If
definitely
you will.
Wasn't a setup.
It's just so ridiculous. But I don't even know how I got on that tangent. But it's just everything right now is deception. We're in Satan's short. Okay, so I forgot. Okay, the biblical timeline. The Christ Millennial Kingdom would be 1,000-year reign of peace on earth. the adversary Satan would be bound in the pit, and humanity would be free. And then we have the Dark Ages from 500 to 1500, which they call it the Dark Ages because it's in verse, right? And then what happens next is the Enlightenment era. And who's the Enlightenment? Lucifer. Lucifer, Satan, same one. So that's what we're in now. And they call it the Dark Ages because there were no quote unquote scientific advances from 500 to from 500 to 1500. But then there was in 1600. Well, why? Because science is the religion of the Luciferians. It is a religion, and it is dark arts, it's sorcery, it's witchcraft, it's magic. And they weren't doing that in the Christ Millennial Kingdom. So there's so much that goes to it. But anyway, Satan's short season is Satan's loosed upon the earth again after the 1,000 years to deceive the nations, to go to the four corners of the earth and bring the number of sand on the shore to battle Gog and Magog. However, it's worded something to that effect in Revelation. And if you look at the number of people on earth right now, it's 8 billion, right? That would be the number of sand on the shore, right? If you were seeing this in some kind of psychedelic experience,
the fractal nature,
and you're writing down what you're seeing, like God's showing you these things, and you said, oh, I see 8 billion people. Well, that looks like the number of sand on the shore, right? On the beach.
Just multiply by 2 and 2 and 2.
Yeah. So I believe that's the time that we're in, and what happens next is the Great White Throne Judgment. So that's why Satan is throwing all of his minions to the wolves, because he's trying to stave off the judgment for himself, and he wants to deceive everyone into thinking he is God, to worship him, to take his mark, to receive Nasara and Gasara, to be forgiven a debt jubilee, and we won't have to worry about money anymore because old Donnie's going to take care of us. Old Elon's going to take care of us with Neuralink. You know, Nero Caesar in Nero Caesar in Old Hebrew in Jewish gematria equals 666, and that's what the Bible says. That the name of the number, or the number of the beast, his name will equal the number of 666, and Nero Caesar equals that. So Elon's got Neuralink, so it's actually probably Neuralink. You know, you're trying to bring that back into play.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So for anyone listening, and they probably picked up a couple ideas, especially regarding Tartaria or the Millennial Kingdom, and how those are two different things, or this whole idea that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Immanuel, it's that Satan was like locked up, like imprisoned for this amount of time, and then that time passes and Pandora's box opens back up again, and Satan is loosed on the earth, like you said. Is that kind of partially what you're saying? Just want to clarify that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Go
ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So I just wanted to ask you this as a way of introducing people to some of the other cool ideas in the series, because like I think this is definitely showing people that this Millennial Kingdom series has packed full of historical information, but we can only scratch the surface here. So there's another point that I think is worth mentioning, and I would like to ask you this. When you're doing this research and you look around, I know Georgia is a pretty fascinating place when you think about Freemasons and things like this, but when you're looking around, for anyone, wherever you are, and you look at old cathedrals, or you look at the landscape and the architecture, these ideas, for me personally, have made me literally change the way that I see these buildings, these cathedrals, these churches. Would you like to speak on that and your personal experience with taking a second look at architecture around you?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about the architecture, and I went to St. Augustine, Mimi and I went to St. Augustine to specifically look at architecture, old world architecture.
It's Florida, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a couple hours from us, 2.5 hours or so. And we went there for like 2 days.
Mm.
And I took like 1,500 photos. That's all. I spent the entire day walking and taking photos of everything. And we went on a helicopter ride. So cool.
Nice.
Yeah, we went over top of a star fort, and I got pictures of that.
And
It's
when
on
you're
my
high up, you
website.
can see like almost like a circuit board or like this pattern that looks like a computer or like
Yeah.
a technological device. Yeah.
Yeah, all of it's super cool. So when we went there, we went to really try to get a feel for things, and then I started seeing in other places too. But the cathedral specifically, we'll stay with the cathedrals for a moment here, is okay, there's a number of different things on these cathedrals that make me believe that they aren't just places of worship as we know it.
Mm.
That, okay, let's start with the outside, the exterior of a cathedral. You have these spires on there that, to me, look like, if I'm using my logic and my imagination, both hemispheres of my brain, what I see is an electrical fence. That these are posts for an electrical fence to be able to run through. That there would be some kind of electromagnetic field. These spires run, and they look exactly like the little metal pieces that are on our power lines right now.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
they're everywhere.
yeah, they look exactly like them, the way that they're, bouncing in and out and then come to a point. They look just like that. So if you look at this old world architecture, you'll have a spire, four little spires, and then you'll have a bigger piece right here in the middle. And then you'll have, again, right next to it, 10 feet away, 5 feet away, 15, depending on, the size of the building. You'll have all these different things happening over and over. But these spires are all over the place. Okay, so that's one aspect of it. It's just weird. That's just an idea, right? So people listening, if you haven't looked into that, go look at it, because seeing is believing. It's very different when you look at the comparisons. So then you get to the windows, and these windows are all in cymatic patterns. And if you don't know cymatics, that's a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
What scientists have learned is that you take a metal plate, you hook it up to some kind of device that plays frequencies through it, and you put on a certain frequency. You put sand, sugar, salt, some kind of granular on the metal plate, and the granular will reorganize itself according to the frequency of the sound that is being put out. You change the frequency, the granular will change with it. So they're called cymatic patterns. Well, when you start to look at the windows of cathedrals, and you are to take out the glass panes, what you have are cymatic patterned windows. That they have metals in there that are now filled with glass, but at one time they weren't. And why they weren't, I think, is probably because they were built during the warming period, when the little warming period, as it's known.
The solar maximum.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't even know if it's a solar maximum now, but it was a 300-year of warming.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like from like 900 to 1200. It's probably even more than that, but they just tell us 900 to 1200. But these buildings weren't built with air conditioning or heating in mind, anything like that. So they didn't need it, because they would have built they had devices, they had systems that they would use to heat and cool buildings, which they didn't have with these ones. So I think that was just because it was very warm in this time period when it was built. So anyway, the windows would be open. Now, the wind is the breath of God. So if the breath of God is coming in through these windows, well, then a certain frequency may be heard inside of these buildings. So then people would be hearing the voice of God.
Yeah.
Right? Very interesting, right? Okay, so let's take it a step further. There are these massive pipe organs that are in cathedrals as well. And most of the time they're pushed up against a window, one of these cymatic patterned windows. And these pipe organs are shaped like very, very large whistles.
Mhm.
So when wind would come in through the window into the different whistles, and because some are wider, some are thinner, some are longer, some are shorter, they're going to play different sounds. So now you're hearing God basically playing like some kind of instrument.
Mm.
You know,
Through the
God's
wind. Yeah.
yes, and it's God's breath is doing it.
Mm.
So you have that aspect of it. Now, the star fort is also in a cymatic pattern, and the star fort, it's shaped like a snowflake. It's actually like a star within a star, which is very cool looking the way that it's all set up. Very, very cool. So what that was probably for was water was probably moving about, and these star forts were probably harvesting the energy from the moving waters, the living waters, which Jesus and God are known as the living waters.
Mm.
So you have all these different aspects of the ether is producing energy that is making an electrical field.
Mm.
You have the wind producing these harmonics inside this building, and you have these living waters. So you have three aspects of God: the air, in two different senses, the air and the water are moving about, creating energy, free energy for
Right.
people to harvest and use. And people are hearing God. They're going to this building to listen to the voice of God,
Mm.
and they're being healed by the beautiful music that is being produced from these pipe organs from God's lips to your ears.
Right. Right. It's
This-
beautiful, man. Like when people think about free energy, I think most people think about Nikola Tesla, because it seems like he was one person who maybe had rediscovered some type of tech that was similar to this AntiquiTech, which is a term that I've been hearing a lot these past couple months. Is that, Tesla may have tapped into this potential, and then of course, and you brought up Trump earlier. Most people know that like Trump's his uncle or his great uncle was one of the
John
people.
G. Trump.
John J. Trump was one of the people involved in seizing Tesla's documents after he was
Oh, yeah, he was the main one in
like,
charge of it all. That
assassinated. Or yeah,
he was the only, well, according to legend, the FBI gave it to him because he was the only one smart enough
yeah, he
to
would hold on to it.
determine. And and Donald Trump was John G. Trump's favorite nephew,
Yes.
and they spent a lot of time together, and that's where you get Project Looking Glass and
Mhm.
the time traveler stuff. Yeah, that's very interesting stuff.
Mm.
And there is something to the time traveling aspect, that if it were that he was a time traveler, well, then that's why you get the Trump card, is because he would have went in time and said, oh yeah, the Trump card, that's the best card because it's my card. And
Right.
also you got the mafia Don, right? And he would have
Yeah.
said, yeah, that the boss is called the Don. So yeah, call him. So you got the Don Trump. If he was a time traveler, they are two things that he would do to change in the past to make it the Don and the Trump card.
It's fascinating, man. It's very fascinating. I think this is gonna be episode 13 of the Local Listens podcast, and this is
Nice.
probably the most like far out that I've ever gone. It's really cool. So speaking on that sentiment, which is great, dude. Like I am a big fan of this whole series, and I really encourage everyone to go and look at the Goodness Over Darkness YouTube channel to check out the Millennial Kingdom series. Especially when you get to the end, you're gonna see a couple things like we had mentioned, like Project Bluebeam, or we had mentioned AI or Elon Musk or the metaverse. All these things are converging, and it's really fascinating to look into it. But it's also interesting to think about on your show, Immanuel. You have a great closing question for people. You ask every guest what they do to ground themselves. But has anyone ever asked you, Immanuel, like what do you do? What are your habits or practices that you like to participate in to keep you connected with Christ or grounded to the earth? I mean, what kinds of things come up for you when you think about that?
Well, I love that you asked me that. I think I did have one guess. I forget who it was, But I did have one guest ask me, and I was
It's
like,
a
"Oh,
great
that's
question,
interesting."
though.
Yeah, because I never thought about it. I'm always the one asking it.
Yeah.
But that, and I will say that during my transformation, because I do ask that to everybody, it sticks with me a little bit, the grounding part. But my transformation, I was very into the astral stuff when I first woke up and, became psychic and learned Jesus. And I think asking that question to everybody has grounded me to
Yeah.
bring all that astral information to the physical world
Right.
to explain it better to normies. I think I can relate to people in a much better way now. So
For
it's
sure.
an important question to ask. So I think my grounding technique is okay. I'll say that I pray a lot, and it's to give thanks and to ask for the benefit of others. I don't typically ask for things for myself because I know as long as I'm doing what God wants me to do, if I'm living as if Christ was living in me, making my decisions, living my life and doing things in the way that he would do them. If I'm doing that and I'm constantly reflecting on myself to make sure that I'm doing that, and then I'm giving thanks to be able to do the things that I do, to live the life that I live, and I'm asking for the help of others, God's going to answer my questions before I even know that I have them.
Yeah.
So I am well taken care of. But I do typically say, ask for healing and protection and guidance, just as a general thing that I like to ask for not just myself, but for everybody. But yeah, so that's a really good one. And another good one, like I was just saying, is reflecting, is looking back. And I ask myself, and this is the one thing that drove me from prison to better myself was, how can I be better today than I was yesterday?
Yeah.
How can I be better tomorrow than I was today? And it didn't matter what it was, if I needed to spend 5 more minutes with my daughter, if I
Yeah.
needed to do 5 more sit-ups, if I needed to
It's baby
talk
steps
to somebody.
sometimes. Or like
Yeah,
what Jordan Peterson says, like clean your room. You gotta have a clean room.
yeah.
Yeah,
Have
exactly.
grow a little patience, or
Yes.
whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Like at that point, I had so many things wrong with me. I was like, I just want to be better. And if you say that to yourself every day, and you pray every day, you're going to become better. And you're reflecting on yourself, and you're really being objective. Like, what could I have done to be better in that situation? That person cut me off, and I honked my horn. Could I refrain from honking my horn? Could I
Been
see
there.
that maybe that person cut me off by accident, and that maybe I overreacted a bit? Those types of things. That is how I have bettered myself and become more comfortable where I am and understanding the things that I understand. So it's always a reflection. It's always talking to God, and it's always thinking, what would Jesus do if he were in my shoes at this moment living my life?
Those are wonderful principles to live by. And it's so cool that like what we were talking about earlier is that if you're doing if you're thinking on what you're grateful for, or if you're reflecting on how you've evolved over time, you're emitting a certain frequency. And it's so cool that people will pick up on that, and you don't really have to ask for things for yourself, because you will be given everything that you're seeking. Even if you don't directly ask for something, it'll find you somehow. And I'm really grateful that we were connected. And it's really funny that when we think about what grounds us, it's usually the opposite of some of my, like when I think about conspiracies, it reminds me of things that don't ground me, like these ideas, they sort of have the potential to like knock me off balance if you think about it like that. But it's really cool that after you've asked all these guests what they do to ground themselves. Like I remember when I was on your show, I said I listen to podcasts and I walk around and I think and I look up at the trees and the birds, and that's still true. But yet after having this discussion with you, Immanuel, as you just said earlier, it's like we're constantly learning new ways and integrating new methods and practices, whether that's like I've heard you speak about reading the Bible in the morning and just like reading a quick passage and then closing the book and just sitting there to think on it. And that's something I've tried myself too. It's really cool.
I love that.
Yeah, man. I'm definitely inspired.
Oh.
So as we wrap up, this has been awesome, dude. I'm so happy we got to do this. Is like
Yeah, me too.
my first podcast ever. My closing ritual question on the Local Listens podcast for you, Immanuel, is if you look back on your journey and you look back on your past self, that could be who you were yesterday or who you were last week, last month, or last decade, however far back you want to go. Imagine a scenario where your past self needs some guidance or some assistance, and you have the opportunity now to give them a bit of advice. What would you say to your past self to guide them through this challenging time?
Everything will be all right. Just stay the course. Never give up. Just never give up. That's what I would tell, because no matter where I was on my course, on my journey, that it would have worked. Just stay. Don't ever stop the game. Don't ever commit suicide. Just keep going. It gets better. It gets easier. There is meaning and purpose to everything that is going on, and you can't possibly understand it until you get down the road a little bit, and then you look back and you see exactly why it all happened the way that it did. And not only that, but you can prevent it from having to happen to others by continuing on the path and not just stopping where you are, but continuing on and helping others come to this understanding.
That's beautiful, man. Beautiful. Stay on the path. There's quite a lot of delightful things coming in our direction, and it's so good to be here with you to witness this unfolding, and I'm really excited to continue chatting. We have a lot to discuss, but we are going to cut it here, and I just want to thank you once again for being here and for being generous with your time. I know you're busy, you're a father, and it's really a true blessing to connect with you, Immanuel, and I want to thank you again for all that you've done to help encourage me to stay on my path, to listen to my personal gnosis, and to pay attention to the signs around me. I want to thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to thank you for having me on. And man, I got to tell you, it's like, having, being with you a month ago, and now you've always been comfortable and confident since I've met you. I mean, it's only been a month, but there was never like this moment of nervousness with you, and you seem like a pro's pro now, just doing your thing, interviewing people and all that. So hats off to you. Everybody make sure that you're liking and sharing all Jake's stuff. He's a really good dude, and he's putting in a lot of hard work. So make sure that you're helping him out best you can.
Thank you, my friend. And before we sign off today, could you please share with everyone where they could listen to you, how they could support you in this wonderful Goodness Over Darkness podcast that you've put together?
All right. So you can catch my audio feed on any audio podcast app or whatever that you listen to audio podcasts on. It's GODcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. And on YouTube as well, they're all on there, the video portion, and it's called Goodness Over Darkness, as well as my 8-part series on Christ's Millennial Kingdom, and I have a 3-part series on the Book of Enoch, a 2-part series on the Biblical Apocalypse, and I'm going to be doing more stuff in the future with that channel. I have my website is ImmanuelKingman.com, where if you are in the need of some life coaching or mentorship type of assistance, you can send me an email and we can get a Zoom call set up and link up for that. And you can find all my social medias on my website. They all have their own little logos for it, so you can go on there. Or any of my episodes, you just go in the description and all the stuff's always in there.
Love it, brother. It's great to be with you again. Thank you so much again for coming on here, and I hope you have an awesome night.
Yeah, you too, my friend.
Cheers. Cheers.
Welcome to the GODcast. Cross up on my back, I'm slaying demons. It don't matter what
what you call that. Searching for the truth, facts are facts until they fall flat. It's looking like a story, man, it's all cap. But it's goodness over darkness, it ain't all bad. I'm at my makeup, but I was called back. Emmanuel, show my people they're under a spell. Heaven or hell is free will. I made my choice and now it's well with my soul. I pray the same for you as well. Welcome to the GODcast. Welcome to the GODcast.
Greetings, my friends. Thanks for being here on the outro to episode 13 of the Local Listens podcast with Immanuel Kingman of the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. That's the GODcast, folks. Better check it out. It is a wonderful show. Immanuel and Mimi are wonderful together, and they also get together with my friend Andy Rouse on the Worship in the Storm. Lots of good stuff there. Please go check it out. And if you were interested in the Millennial Kingdom that we were speaking about earlier, make sure you go to the Goodness Over Darkness YouTube page so you can see Emmanuel's full presentation. It's pretty wild, guys, and it'll definitely make you scratch your head and rethink history, where we've been, where we're going, and very excited that we got to get together again. I have a lot to thank Immanuel for. He opened the podcasting door for me, and I'm really happy that we were able to get back together after one quick month. It really flew by, guys, but just want to thank everyone. Thank you guys for being here and for continuing to listen with me, and for everyone in my Telegram group. That would be the Loco Listeners community. That's t.me/Loco Listeners. Please come on in, bring your dankest memes, and let's have some fun. Anyways, guys, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you for all your support. I'm looking forward to chatting with a lot of cool guests. So if you want to be on the show, just feel free to reach out to me. You know where to find me. Either way, I'll leave you with this. Wherever you are, be here, be now, and be you.